All right, Doc, here we go. How you feeling?
Feeling good. Check, check. We working? One, here it is.
Mike sounds like you. All right, so Doc, welcome to Joe's Moving Emporium.
Beautiful.
Welcome to Mount Rainier, Maryland, the DMV. Yeah, and as you can see, folks are here to celebrate you and celebrate the drum. So I'm just going to ask the first question and just let you share with us, how did you get exposed to the state of drum? Sort of,
Okay.
You're doing it all these years.
Gotcha. So, before we go any further, another big round of applause for the brothers and sisters who just played. That's the first time I had some drummers play a drum call for me, and that's very special because, you know, it's important that we honor our elders while they're here. Not when we got to honor them when they pass on to the other side, but when they're here, we got to take advantage of them. So I got started in this drum thing a few years ago. We ain't going up in the numbers and all that. But I grew up on a street in Philly called Arch Street. And every year we had the Elks. And the Elks were like African-American men who had been in the service and women who were supportive of that. And they had a parade through my neighborhood every year in May. And from the time I was a little boy, I experienced this parade every year. And we would sit on the porch, and everybody would be waiting, and way off in the distance you could hear boom, 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 and it's getting louder. They're getting closer, and it's getting louder. And now they're passing by me. The drums, steppers, the drill team leader, everybody was going by me. And then it would fade off. And that was my introduction to the drum, because I knew at that point I got to be connected to that somehow. So when I got old enough to come off the porch, I would follow that parade around. And from there, that began my journey into understanding or trying to grasp the importance of the drum. The folks that play the drum, we are the keepers of our culture. So it's very important that you know the story, that you know the history. So, you know, if you play saxophone, most likely you can talk about Charlie Parker and Coltrane and Sonny Stitt and some of those greats. Or if you play piano, you can talk about Herbie Hancock or Duke Ellington, but can you talk about the hand drummers who came before you? The hand drummers that sort of paved the way for you to do what you do. So it's important to know those names, to know those people, and now you can find the information so easily because it's in your phone, you know. So we got to get into like really knowing our history so that we can keep it up, so that we can always bring it to the level that it should be. So that's my answer to question number one.
So I know in Philly, some time ago, there was an organization we started, Traditional African Drummers Society.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so this organization was called the Traditional African American Drummers Society, and it was formed by some of the elder drummers in the city of Philadelphia. And originally it started as a way to really be organized and have an opportunity where we could get together and play on a regular basis, and to also bring in master drummers to do a workshop similar to this sort of thing, and really just highlight the importance of the drum and how important it is in our culture, in our history, and in the music. Because if you notice in today's music, you don't hear too much of this stuff. And that's unfortunate. It's like the younger people who are making the music today don't have a clue what the drum and percussion brings to the music. And a lot of times, see people that don't understand how to represent the drum correctly. And so those folks have a tendency to put out false information. And then somebody grabs onto it and then they continue the false information. Till it gets to the point where people say, well, what do we need a percussionist or conga player in the band for? What's he bringing to the table? Most of the time, these cats that don't know, don't have a clue what to do to make the music become more enhanced. So that's our job as percussionists, is to bring something to the table to enhance the music. You might have an arsenal of instruments, but you can't play all those instruments in one song. Because if it's a ballad, how you gonna play timbales in a ballad? You might could fit them in, but 9 times out of 10 they ain't gonna work, because a ballad is slow. So what do you play in place of the timbales or the congas? So it's important to know these other things.
So Doc, take us from the tradition of the drum through your path on, meeting Grover and making that transition from traditional drumming into,
Right,
R&B.
right. Well, when I first started, I used to play for dance classes. And when I first started, the djembe hadn't really come on the scene. Logic Kamara was probably one of the first for us to see when he played the djembe at the World's Fair in '64, I believe. So, djembe hadn't really made its way to Philly at the time that I was learning classes. So we played congas and cowbell, and I started out on the cowbell, because you got to understand the cadence and the rhythm of the cowbell, so that when you move to the drum, you understand how to make it all fit. So my early training was in traditional hand drumming. Learning the traditional Afro-Cuban drumming. We didn't really get that in the beginning when I started, but after a while, when the Cubans started coming to America, we started learning what clave is and how does rumba fit with clave. And then you start listening to Brazilian music and hearing how the different percussion instruments are used in Brazilian music. So it's important to know the roots. It's important to know the tradition. And then I had to take what I learned traditionally and adjust that to commercial music. So, Wawanko is so I might not can play all of that in a tradition in commercial music. So I might can just play so I'm leaving out some stuff, but I gotta know the real stuff. I gotta know the rules before I can break the rules. That makes sense? You gotta know the rules before you break the rules. You can't start breaking the rules and you don't know them. Yeah, man, I got this new thing that I started doing. Yeah. Where's the root? What's the root to that you're playing? So, that's one of my things. You gotta know the rules before you can break the rules.
So talk to us a little bit about Grover. I mean, everybody here probably has heard Mr. Magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's an anthem all over the world, actually, right?
Everywhere.
And so,
That's why I picked that too.
And so, you being the only one in the room that was there with Grover, at the recording of that, the performance of that, and Grover has transitioned. But you're here to kind of speak to that. So can you take us through that, meeting Grover, recording that song?
Well, I met Grover when he was a special guest. I was playing with George Benson at the Carnegie Hall. And Grover was like a special guest, so he came in and played a few tunes with George. And at the time, I didn't really have the gig with George Benson. I only had the gig if he was close to Philly. So we used to play a place down here in Baltimore called the Red Bank, I think. This was years ago. So he would call me for that, or if he was in New York or in Philly. But if he was in LA, I didn't get that call. So I wasn't really in the band. And I had the same situation with Freddie Hubbard. he was the first person that I really got an opportunity to play with. But once again, in his situation, I wasn't really in the band, only if he was close to Philly. So when I met Grover, I said, man, can I come and sit in with you? Because he was playing a club in Philly a couple of weeks later. And I sat in with him, and he said, well, man, I like what you're doing, come on back. So that weekend, I sat in and played, and he said, man, if I get an opportunity to hire a percussionist, I'm gonna call you. I was like, yeah, right. I heard that story, you know. So 3-4 months later, this was in April, 3 or 4 months later, Mr. Magic came out and it was a big hit for him. So he called me and he said, man, I want you to go on the road with me. So I think we went to like Cincinnati, Chicago, and New Orleans. And so he said, man, how did you like the gigs? I said, man, it was great. He said, well, man, this is your gig if you want it. I was like, you mean whenever you work, I work? He said, that's right. So the next 3 years, we were together. I don't know how many records I recorded with him during that time. Mr. Magic was already recorded. Ralph McDonald was the percussionist and the co-writer on that song. And as a side note, it's very important to be a writer of the music. It's all right to play, but you make your money as a writer. Because as a writer, your music is played over and over and over. And if it's a hit, it's played all around the world, multiple times. Every time it's played, you make a couple of bucks. So, it's okay to be playing in a band, don't get me wrong, but you only get paid one time when you play with a band. But if you write a song, you get paid over and over. And if it's a hit, more money, more money, more money. And I mean, that's what it's about. You want to, you know, if you're in this, you want to be able to make a living at it. You know, I don't fault anybody that plays part-time and has to go to work, because you got to make money one way or the other. So if the music ain't making you money, get the 9 to 5. Because you can always play on the weekends, you can always practice after work. But if you got a family, you got to keep it real. You want to pay the bills, you got to have a job. And, you know, God knows I heard that a lot from my parents. When you gonna get a real job? Because I went to school to be an artist, to learn how to paint and draw, fine arts. Once again, when you gonna get a job? Because the art wasn't paying no money. And in the beginning with the drumming, it wasn't paying any money either. But I persevered. I worked at Penn Fruit for a minute as a cashier. Every now and then I got to step off and do a little 9 to 5 to make some money if the music isn't making money. I've driven a cab, and I've done other things to make a living. But mainly, the music has helped me to survive, and I thank the Creator for that.
So before we run too short on time, I just want to open up the microphone to others who may have questions while we still have time in this hour. So just feel comfortable to step up to the mic.
Just step right on up to the mic. Don't be afraid. And matter of fact, if you want, you can just shout it out, because my ears are still good.
So can you speak on practicing? Like
Practice?
Yeah, just
Practice.
how do you approach like practicing alone, or could you give some advice on how people can go about that, just in terms of maybe taking care of your hands? I don't know, whatever you want to do.
Right, I got you. Okay, so, I'm gonna talk about congas for a hot minute. There are basic tones for the conga drum that take longer to get than the basic tones for djembe. Regardless of what drum you're practicing, you gotta put the time in. I used to have a teacher to tell me, if you can put in 15 minutes a day, every day, you'll notice the difference in a month. But you gotta put the time in, and you just don't wanna sit down and just be like playing. You wanna have a specific reason why you're sitting down to play. You wanna loosen up your wrist. It's very important. So you gotta do little exercises to loosen up the wrist. you know. You got to do basic exercises to develop the tones, because you want the tone on your right hand to be the same on the left hand. So if I close my eyes or I turn my back, I don't know whether you struck the drum with your left hand or your right hand, because they both should sound the same. So you want to work on that kind of thing. And then, for me, because when I was coming along, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have YouTube. We had ears. We had to develop ears. Put the record on. Y'all know what records are? they like big CDs. And you had to have a needle. So you didn't have no electronic reading thing. So every now and then you had to put the needle back to catch the words. Put the needle back every now and then to hear exactly what was that riff that he played. Mongo Santa Maria, who was one of my mentors, always played certain riffs. So you could listen to his records, and when he soloed, you could hear some of those riffs. So now I'm going to try to emulate those riffs. And I used to practice with records. I used to play Latin records so that I could develop what they call tumbao, how to play basic rhythm, and how to play it over a period of time. I never played with a Latin band because, for me, where my spirit was at, I wanted to play more than just the tumbao. So I had to learn the congas, I had to learn bongo, I had to study timbales, I had to learn the guiro, the cowbell, all of the other percussion instruments are involved in Latin music. And then I wanted to expand from there. So I didn't just want to stay in one genre, which is okay. But back in the day when I was coming up, if you didn't have a Z or an A or an O at the end of your name, you couldn't get the gig. In other words, if you wasn't Latin, if your last name wasn't Martinez or Gonzalez, then you couldn't get the gig. And there was one brother that we came up together in Philly. His name was Peachy. He passed away. Peachy played exactly like Cubans, so they didn't know what he was. They said, "Hey man, where you from, man?" He said, "Man, I'm from Philadelphia. I'm a Spookerican from Philadelphia." You know, because they had to give it up to him. But 9 times out of 10, you didn't get the gig if you wasn't Hispanic. Fast forward. I live in LA. I moved there about 4 years ago. The majority of the hand drummers that got the good gigs are Hispanic. Because there's that myth the Hispanic cats can play better than the brothers. And what folks don't understand about African American hand drummers is that we're exposed to everybody's culture. That's who we are. Somebody said to me the other day, "Well, what do y'all bring to the table?" I said, "We bring to the table what he plays, what he plays, what he plays. Because if he playing djembe, we play djembe. Cat that's playing djembe in Mali or Guinea or Senegal, you ain't gonna find no itotole in his house, or bata. You go to a cat's crib in Brazil, you're gonna find a sordu. 9 times out of 10, you ain't gonna find a junjun, or congas, or beating, you'll find a beating bow. You go to Cuba, you ain't gonna find no beating bow in Cuba. You come to my house, I got congas, I got djembe, I got beating bow, I got dum-dum. I got a lot of different shit, excuse me. So that's a myth that we don't bring anything to the table. And we play funk. Y'all know about that go-go down here. Right. That ain't nothing but Wawanko all bastardized. Let's be real, you know. So that's what African American hand drummers bring to the table. We bring all of that. And that's why it's important we gotta know how to do all of this. Because when they call for us to come and do the gig, like I know a guy that was auditioned for Anita Baker gig, came with a djembe. He can only hang in one song, because she does ballads. How you gonna play djembe in a ballad? Kind of hard. Is there anything else you can play in the ballad? This brother had no other things in his arsenal. All he had was the djembe. He didn't get the gig. It's like I ain't naming no names, but there was a gentleman on TV. He played with sticks on congas. And you can use a stick, one stick on the conga. I know how to work with the stick and the hand and the drum. But it don't call for a bunch of drumsticks, and every time the drummer does a fill, I'm gonna do a fill. I have no voice. What's my voice? Yes?
Who's Patato? He hurt his hand?
Who?
Patato. Patato, Carlos Patato.
Yeah, he played with a stick. Sometimes.
He hurt his hand, that's why he used to use his
Yeah.
hand.
But I'm talking about a guy that played with two sticks. And I ain't naming no names, but if we put him in a paper bag and said, play your way out, he'll still be in that bag. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Jabari, for that question. Anybody- Come on to the.
You got a question? Come on, man. Come on, let's keep it
Can
moving.
you hear me?
I can hear you. Come on.
You talk about your relationship with Ralph McDonald.
Okay, so Ralph, right quick. I met Ralph McDonald through Grover Washington Jr. Me and Grover were tight. Grover took me to a section, and it was a Bob James session, and they were recording a tune called Westchester Lady. This was at the time when everybody was in the room together. Nobody was in the basement doing tracks. And then they called from, yo, can you put something on my tracks? Everybody was there together. The bass player was over there, the piano was there. Everybody was in the room together. And Ralph McDonald said, man, come on in my booth, because we recorded the famous Rudy Van Gelder studio. And that was my beginning relationship with Ralph McDonald. He said, man, you're welcome to come to my studio in New York anytime. And so I would go to his studio and I would just watch him. He never said, look, do this, do that. He would just let me watch him. He would take me to sessions so I understood how to record in the studio, because there's a difference playing all of this stuff in the studio as opposed to playing it live. Back when I came along, either you were a live musician or you were a studio musician. Very rarely did the studio musician go on the road because he made more money at home, and vice versa. The musician who went on the road made his money on the road because he didn't get called to come into the studio. So for me hanging with Ralph, I learned a lot, so I became able to play in the studio, and of course I was already playing live with Grover. So Ralph really put me down with how percussion fits in the music. And he also put me down with understanding the importance of being a songwriter. Because a couple of the hits, when you have a hit, that means it's played by other people also, in different languages sometimes. He had Where Is the Love, which is a super hit. And he had Mr. Magic, and he also had Just the Two of Us. Those were major hits. And when you have a hit, sometimes you can retire off of the hit because it's been played and used so many times. So that's my Ralph McDonald story. I'm good, man.
But, you know, in the musical lexicon, I think a lot of times the drummer and the percussionist are considered, well, even though you're the foundation, you still don't get the same respect as the rest of everyone else. But when you understand the music and you have something to say about it, like a lot of times folks don't take it well if you say to anybody else outside of the percussion family, like, won't you try this? Because the expectation is, let's keep it 100, you're the dumb drummer. So the disrespect for the drum is really the disrespect to Africa. If we're gonna keep it 100.
Right.
what are your expectations and how have you been, being that you have so much experience in the business, how are your observations, criticisms, directions, how are they received by others?
Well, there's very little respect for us, okay? Especially the hand drummer. Years ago, like in the 60s, the hand drummer, the conga player, was usually up front. Singers was there, hand drummer was right here, and then the band was behind them. But the hand drummer was on stage, up front. Then, somebody came up with the bright idea, let's move the hand drummer to the back of the stage beside the set drummer. Now, the hand drummer is no longer on stage. You got everybody else in the band, but the hand drummer is no longer on stage. Latin music will not be Latin music without the conga drummer and the bongo player, the timbale player. They up front. They still have respect for the drum. Our music, R&B, commercial music, we've lost respect for the drum. And that's by design. Because as long as those who are in power, the rich, who want to control, don't want the drum out there, because if people go see you and you make a difference, if they go and see these young people who was playing just a while ago, them folks got culture. They can talk to you about what kind of drum they're playing, where it comes from, and maybe additional information. Information is power. You start talking about your culture. You start talking about we come from kings and queens. You start talking about what our ancestors did before they were enslaved. Don't nobody want you to be talking like that. Because as long as our people remain ignorant of our culture, we're in trouble. And you can see it today. Look at all the killing, black on black killings going on. They got us bamboozled. They even got them white folks that they call poor white trash or crackers. They got them confused too. Because everybody thinking it's a black-white thing going on. It ain't black and white. It's rich versus poor. And there's very few rich, but it's a whole lot of poor people out here. So that's where it's really at. It ain't a black-white thing. It ain't a race thing. It's a money thing. That's why all them folks that voted for
Don't say.
you might have some spies, right? But anyway, whoever voted for that clown, they lost too, because they think it's a black and white thing. They kind of went for his okie doke. The real deal is rich and poor. When you look at it, who's he looking out for? The rich. You know, so as long as that's going on, they don't want us coming around because we can make a difference in terms of culture. Case in point, look at how the Black Panthers did, and look at the good things that they did for the community. But the government said, no, y'all can't do that. Because you're educating people. You're doing things that's important for the people. Government's not important for the people, they're just important for the rich, especially this government we got now. So it's important to know your art, to know your trade, even if you're just a weekend warrior. Tell the story, you know. Support brothers that are making traditional instruments. Support people in the community, our people, support them. You know, because we need that. You know, we got to start turning this thing around. And it starts with you folks right here, starts with the music, starts with the drum. Yes? That's all right, holler it out, baby.
I got a question. So how do you survive by, like, you know, different cultures, and how do you put yourself out there, like, you know, in different kind of terms?
You mean in terms of making a living as
Yes.
as a drummer?
Yes.
Huh. That's a whole nother story. How much time we got? Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I came along, it was different. When I came along, it was different. There were clubs where you could play, where you could develop your talent. There are very few clubs where you can play now. And there's very little opportunity. And unless you are in Los Angeles, maybe Chicago, maybe Atlanta, definitely New York. If you're not in one of those places, it's very hard to make a living doing this. That's why it's better just to have a job and enjoy playing, as opposed to trying to make a living and enjoy playing at the same time, because it's rough. And it's worse now than it's been before. You look at some of the groups that are on TV or that you hear, how many have a conga player, a percussionist? Very few. I have a student, he's playing with Jill Scott, and he plays with John Legend. If it wasn't for those two folks, he wouldn't have a job. You know, because there's not many R&B acts to carry percussionists any longer. So, there's no real secret. You know, it's about persevering and really going after it, like going after it with a vengeance. And even then, there's no guarantee. This young lady right here.
Getting back to basics, I just started drumming not too long ago, and I want to know, how do you develop your ear when you're trying to get your sounds and everything pulled together? What's the best way to do that? Because when I'm sitting with the group, I'm good, but when I'm by myself, it's like I'm not always certain. Is this the right sound? Am I doing the right thing? How do you develop the ear for that?
You gotta listen to a lot of different music. You gotta develop your ear. And the only way you can develop your ear is from listening to a lot of music, a lot. You know, you play Sangwa and Juju or Jimmy.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to listen to like Mama D. Keita and you know, Famadu, all them folks like that. You know, you want to listen to them, listen to their recordings, and hone into just the basic. You know, not. I mean, you can listen to all the riffs that they playing, but you got to get the basic before you get to the solo section, you know. So you want to listen to the basic rhythm, the basic parts that are being played. Develop your ear to hear just that. When I was studying rumba, I want to hear just what the tumba is doing. I want to just focus on just what the tumba. So I gotta listen past the clave, I gotta listen past the cascara, I gotta listen past the other drums and just hear the tumba. So that's developing your ear. That's taking the time to like really hear as opposed to hearing the whole thing. You know, when you listen to a record, you hear the whole rhythm. Beautiful. Now let's start getting all the way into that and find out what are the accompanying djembes playing? What is the segunda playing with congas? What's the agogo playing? Just the agogo. Not the shaker, not the dum-dum-da-da-da-da, just the agogo. What's he playing? I'm just gonna study that for the day. Dong-ging, dong-gong-ding-gi, dong-dong-dong-ging, gong-gong-gi, dong-dong-dong-ging-gi, dong-dong-dong-ging. So I'm gonna study just what he's playing. And then I'm gonna have my go-go so I can work along with the record. Or I'm gonna have my djembe so I think I hear the basic. I'm gonna work on that. So that's developing the ear.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
We got time for one more question, so we're gonna.
One more, yes, sir.
Thanks for coming out, first of all.
My pleasure. Thanks to Mike. Mike, give him a big round of applause. Mike Prim.
Yeah, so my question is, what are some of of your strategies when you're in a band environment to like helping your bandmates to stay on tempo? So, you know, if you've got a so-and-so, a bass player that's getting ahead of the rhythm, how do you help to like bring them back? Do you
I just grabbed the
solo?
biggest cowbell I got. Yo! Hey! No. That's a rough one because depending on your relationship with the other musicians, if it's your boys or your friends, and if they can listen, because I had one of my oldest teachers said, when somebody comes and asks you, can I study with you? My question back is, can you be taught? Because if you can't be taught, ain't nothing I can teach you. If you think you're gonna come in the door now, you're gonna teach me, we don't have no relationship. So first off is, can the bass player who's speeding be taught that we got to keep this thing in the pocket? Because one thing that I learned, there is a pocket. And there's 3 different places we can be in that pocket. We can be right on it. We can be just a hair quick. Or we can be a hair behind. And it can be still in the pocket. 3 different places. What pocket are we playing? And then how do we stay in that pocket? So I would tell somebody, if you got a rushing problem and you can't dig that you're rushing, you need to practice with a metronome. It's like going in the studio and saying, we have a click track, and you have to play to the click track. That's why a lot of live musicians back in the day couldn't play in the studio, because if they wanted to record something and they wanted everything to be like on point, they would have a click, 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 and we gotta play to that. And depending on where the pocket is, if we playing behind it a little bit, or we playing up on it, we gotta be able to play with that click. So if somebody's having a time problem, they can't stay in time, they gotta speed up or whatever, they don't realize they're speeding up, because it's natural to wanna like, but it ain't natural till we starting off here, and all of a sudden we here, something wrong, where the pocket? So, if the person's willing to listen, then we gotta work on the pocket. Let's just chop wood, bass and drums. Chop wood in the pocket. Because guess what? You wanna make a living up in this thing? Play on 2 and 4. Know the pocket. A whole lot of drumming, a whole lot of chops. I love these cats that can play with all these chops. But then how do we put them chops into the music, into the pocket? So, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody who asked questions. That's actually a perfect question to transition us into the demo section. I just want to share one thing with you. I spoke to, how many people here have attended the Mid-Atlantic Jazz Festival? That happens. Yeah, so that's every year in February. It takes place in Rockville, put together by brother Paul Carr, saxophone player. And I spoke to Paul about infusing a percussion element into the festival. Because right now, there is no percussion element in the Mid-Atlantic Jazz Festival. So it's like the percussion doesn't exist in the music. So I invited Paul today. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it, but I'm going to send him a video of us talking with Doc and getting this information. And I think it's real promising that we're going to be able to make that connection. I use the old classic line, teamwork makes the dream work. So, here we are really focusing on percussion, and we really got to bring those 2 elements together. There should be a percussion element at the festival as we're talking about jazz. So, knowing that he's going to watch this video, and we're going to talk further, this is a grand time for us to a rousing applause for Paul Carr to say, Paul, we need percussion in the festival when you and Mike talk about it, so if we applaud it up, maybe when he watches the video.
I just want to say one thing. If you notice, in today's jazz music, where's the drum? Back in the day, Art Blakey put out 4 or 5 records with hand drummers. Where's the drum? How come the drum is not in jazz music? It's a big part of jazz music. Why isn't it there? So, you know, it's important for people like Paul, who's in a position to make a difference, to make that difference. Because if we're not careful, the drum will be gone. You know, when we're gone, it'll go with us. And that's not what it's about. Yes, in the back.
I really appreciate y'all music. I wish I could be like y'all, but I sing.
Well, that's good. Give her a round of applause. Okay, so. All right. So, we're gonna do a tune called Footprints. And it's a Wayne Shorter tune. And it's usually played in 6 or 3. We're gonna play it in 4, sort of like a Latin kind of feel. So I need somebody to play congas. Don't be shy. I need somebody to play cowbell. Come on. I need somebody to play cowbell. I need somebody to play bongo. Don't be shy. What's up, bro? So y'all switch them around the way you want. I need we need a chair. We need a chair for who gonna play congas. Yep. Who gonna play the congas? Okay. Yep. Okay. All right. Grab a chair and a chair for bongo. Okay, one guy there. One guy here. Here's the other. Okay. So. this last tune we played was Footprints. So we were able to put like a wah wah coat. So we went traditionally into an Afro-Cuban direction. I couldn't do that with the first tune we played, the Bob James tune. I know culture, but I couldn't put it in that tune. So it's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Although I'm extracting from the culture and the tradition, I gotta think more commercial because the tune is more commercial sounding. So that's one reason why I picked that tune, because it's a real mellow kind of smooth jazz type song. That's what you hear on the radio a lot today, smooth jazz. So now how do I take from what I know about the culture and all of this stuff and make the adjustment to smooth jazz? That's the ticket. And that's up to you. I can show you the key, I can give you the key, but you gotta turn the key and open the door and go through and figure out how do you make that work. Okay? So, I like to keep it like that, you know. If I'm playing, if we playing some, you know, Kaki Lambe or some stuff like that, we can write music around that, but we can't take the music and then fit Kaki Lambe up in there. We might could do that, but if we use all the drums, then it really becomes Kaki Lambe and everybody else got to accompany the drums. So if we're playing with somebody that wrote a song that we could probably fit Kaki Lambe up in, we might have to extract some parts of that rhythm so that it fits with the song. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So look, that was like a while ago. Play clave one more time. So, the second beat is called a golpe. One, ah. My inside is on the golpe. Okay, so let me say this. Hold up. It's gotta be clean. You don't hear this. It's there, but it ain't gotta be like, it ain't gotta be that. Because the main thing is I wanna hear this, and I wanna hear this. So everybody don't need to play. Because I wanted to show y'all how the parts fit and how important it is to listen to the clave. The clave is the key. If you're not listening to the clave, you're playing out of clave. It's important to play in clave. So the inside tone, the golpe, the inside tone is on the second beat of clave. So before I jump in and start playing anything, I gotta listen to the clave. Nobody else play. Keep going. There's a pattern here. They call it wah-wah or cascada. It's got clave here. Go, keep it straight. Whoa, hold it. You gotta stay right there, because I want to put the other drum in. If you start filling it in, then I ain't got nowhere to put this guy. So you got to keep it straight. Stay in clave. Always listening for the golpe. Don't think you know it or you got it. You got to listen to the clave. If you listen to the clave, you got it. If you're not listening to the clave, you don't got it. ¿Está bien? You know what I'm saying? Okay. 1, 2, ready, and. Any questions? Any questions?
I got a thing. It's a call and response.
What? Yeah, it's all call and response.
So I'm calling you guys to respond. That's why it's in-
Well, the key is, you gotta know where clave is and where you fit in clave. That's all you gotta know. Focus on the clave. Because if the clave is right, you get off, you just gotta stop and get back in. Don't try to get back in and still play, because you'll continue to play on the wrong side. So if you hear that you're not in the right place, stop. Listen to the clave and come back in. It's better to do that than to keep trying to find it and play at the same time. You can do that, but you gotta be real comfortable in your slot. You know, you come out and pop, you gotta get back in. You can't get right back in. You gotta stop.
Gotta go home.
Yeah, you gotta stop. You gotta get up. You gotta get up. So you don't wanna get up, so you gotta, the ear, listening is very important. Somebody asked about the question of listening earlier. This is where you listen. You know, when you listen to a Wall on Cole record, or anything, you listen, focus on just one drum. See if you can get back up in there and find and hear just what the one drum is playing. Don't listen to the whole thing, because when you listen to the whole thing, it's really, you're just enjoying it now. But if you study it, you gotta get inside. You gotta go all the way up in that and find out what is that one drum playing, or what is he playing on 2 drums, or 3 drums. And if you have to, slow it down. Like, everybody got these gadgets on their phone. You can record the record or the song, and then on your phone you can slow it down so that you can hear the part. That's studying, as opposed to like going on YouTube and getting wowed by Giovanni or Joe Blow or whoever. Because them cats, man, you guys is eating Wheaties for breakfast or something. I don't know. But whatever they eat, we ain't eating. So you got to study. And the way to study, this is how you study. You got to get into the music, you know. And don't be afraid to make a mistake, because that's a part of studying. The place where you don't want to make the mistake is on stage, or when you're playing in an ensemble, and you're so excited about playing that you're playing on the wrong side, and you don't dig it. And even worse, don't nobody else dig it. Get that look. And you get that look, like,
Yeah. You don't wanna get that.
well, look how the time flies right now. You know, so you want to make sure that if you're going to study, you got to get all the way into the song. Phone just come on, man. If you're studying, get into the song. If you're just listening for enjoyment, listen to the whole thing, no problem. But if we're gonna study, if I'm sitting down to study, and right quick, for everybody. I'm left-handed. So for me, my weaker hand is my right hand. So exercise for everybody with your weaker hand. 1, 2, just watch. 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 4. You can't get that in nice and clean. Slow it up. 1, 2, 3, exercise for the wrist. If you notice, my hand's coming all the way up, and I want to stretch this muscle here. It's about stretching this muscle. This is for the djembe players, karma players. You want to stretch your muscle. Another exercise. I'm going to give you 2 exercises. The other ones you got to get with me on the line. Another one, very important. Heel, heel, toe. Heel, heel. Just watch, just watch, just watch. Notice I'm raising my hands, I'm creating the flow. I always got boom, 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 boom. That's all I want to hear. Heel, 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 heel. Really, I'm using the whole fat part of my hand for that. This part, quiet. The exercise. Where it's comfortable, not where you like. No, where it's comfortable. Once you get it to where it's comfortable, even if it's just this, then let's roll with that for about 5 minutes. Get a little faster, good. Hold up, hold up. On you, man. You gotta listen sometimes. Sometimes you gotta listen. Because if you're not listening and you're talking, you can't hear. Then you're gonna say, what was that you said earlier? And I'm gonna say, give me $50. Because you wasn't listening. So everybody, that's why I only want to do a couple of drums. Because everybody want to play, but sometimes you gotta listen. Because what I'm giving you, bam, you gotta grasp it, because I don't know when I'm coming back. You know. So what I'm giving you, you can work on this. You can take it to the bank, baby. I'm telling you, but you gotta get it from listening. So, nice even. My toe quiet. Something. That's the exercise. It don't have to be that fast, but it's gotta be even. It's like a metronome. Tick, 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 tick. We gotta be the metronome, because who are we? The timekeepers. Drummers, don't be late for no gig. Because if you late, you ain't a drummer. We timekeepers, so how can we be late on time? Stop being late. Stop taking this thing for granted. If the gig is at 9, you should be there at 8:30. Cat told me you on time if you're there at 8:30. You there at 8:45, you're getting close to late. You get there at 9 and the gig is at 9, go home. Because if you on my gig and you show up at 9, I'm gonna say, yo, that's all right. Don't even come on stage. I don't care if you're the drummer, the bass player, I don't care. You can't be late on my, you can't come on my stage late. We are the owners of time. Do not be late for the gig. Be early. It's better to be early when you get there, set your stuff up, relax, and get yourself mentally and spiritually ready for the gig. As opposed to have to run in, take your clothes off, change. Man, come on, man. We ready to, and you, oh man, now you're out of pocket. We own time. We are drummers. So we can't be late. Everybody got that? Sure. We cannot be late. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah.
Any? Not you. Yes.
Can you talk about the importance of being calm while you're creating?
Being calm?
Yeah.
Oh, you have to be calm. You have to be relaxed. You have to be relaxed. You cannot play tightened up, excited. Breathe. You feel yourself starting to hype up? Breathe. Breathe. Easy. Easy. Think about your solo. When you got your solo, you ain't got to jump right in there. stay up in your groove for a minute, and then come on out with it. You ain't gotta jump in there and tell a story. I was telling both of these gentlemen that was playing, like, solo. When you solo, it's like the way you talk. You know, you talk to a certain period, and then you end that sentence. You can end that sentence with a period, exclamation mark, a question mark. But you gotta talk here on the drum like you're telling a story. You don't just talk, keep talking, you don't take a breath. That's the way you gotta play, take a breath. Take a breath. I'm telling a story. So when you solo, think about the story. What's the story gonna be? And you might have a lot of stuff up in your arsenal, but you can't play everything in one song. Pick and choose. It's like you go into your mind and you say, okay, I'm gonna use that one, use this one, get these two here. And this is what I'm gonna build my solo from, as opposed to like a whole hopefully you see, how can I fit all that shit up in this story? It ain't gonna happen. So you tell a story. So that's the approach to when you're playing. 1 drum, 2 drums, 3 drums. And if you can't play 3 drums, don't play. Stick with 2. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Tata Winners is where you at on 2 drums. Tata Winners. Check them out. Tata Winners from Cuba. But check these folks out that I'm gonna give you right quick. Chief Bay, African American hand drum. Chief Bay. Chief Bay. Y'all know that Olatunji record, Drums of Passion? Yes. Chief Bay is one of the original drummers on that record. Everybody thinks that there was Africans playing on that record. The only African on that record was Olatunji from Nigeria. Everybody else was African American. Chief Bay was on that record. Mantego Joe was on that record. Taiwo Duval was on that record. African American hand drummers. It was up in New York, along with Baba Femi, African American hand drummer. Philadelphia African American hand drummer. Robert Crowder. Baba Crowder. He's on other Olatunji records. Bobby Crowder, Sonny Morgan, Philadelphia hand drummer. Garvin Matso. These were the 3 African American hand drummers in Philadelphia. They were the ones, along with another brother from Philadelphia named Sam Fan. His name was Baba Dale. The 4 of them took the Shaker Egg to New York. Before they went to New York didn't know anything about the Shaker Egg. Bobby Crowder, Sonny Morgan, Garvin Matso, Sam Fan were the ones who took the Shaker Egg to New York and introduced it to New York. These are African American hand drummers that you should know, because they were the ones that paved the way for you to do what we're doing right here. All them brothers are what we call beat by ear. They have passed on. So it's on us to continue that story in its entirety and correct, because not enough hand drummers know where this comes from. This was long before LP was even LP. See, Martin Cohen got his thing from the Hispanic cats in New York. And that's where all of this development came from. But in terms of the ones that did the blood, sweat, and tears in this country, it was them. Because I don't know if y'all know it or not, but the drum was banned. This drum was banned. 100 years ago, we all could be hung for sitting around playing this drum. And yet, somebody still continued to play it. Somebody said, you know what, You might hang me, but you gotta catch me first. And they passed it on. Nat Turner started his rebellion from this drum. That's why the European, the enslavers said, yo, there's too much power in the drum. There's too much power in the drummer. That's why we ain't in the music today. Because we come with too much power, too much ashe. Don't forget it. We are the keepers of the culture. And we gotta be able to tell the story correctly. What we did today, we created some beautiful music in the short time that we all played together. And this is what it's all about. Circles. One big circle of love. Because we all just healed ourselves. Because I know I was sweating. And when I sweat, I'm having fun, you know. And I saw smiles on faces of people enjoying themselves. So that's what it's about. This drum is about community. Take what you learn and give it to some kids. Pass this thing on. Because we ain't got, how much time we got? Who knows? But we gotta take advantage of the time that we got. Because we all leaving here. And nobody came back from the other side to tell us how great it is. Because if they did, we would all be dying to get over it. So they couldn't. God said, I can't let you go back and tell them how sweet this thing is over here. So we got to make this thing work while we're here. Everybody know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, I wish I had been here before yesterday. Because yesterday I went to my sister's daycare with my 2 drums and my bongos and a bunch of blue ones on the side.
Yeah.
Share that with them as much as I knew.
That's what you got to do, man. Because see,
Or Tunji.
number 2, they don't put none of this stuff in the school. This music, period, ain't in the school. This is definitely not in the school. Not unless you go into a school that's dedicated to music, that is very understanding of the importance of this drum. I don't know how you can have a music school and you don't have hand drums in the music school. This is the root. This is the first thing we heard when we was in the womb was the beat of our mother's heart.
Yeah, that's a rhythm.
So, you know, how come the heartbeat ain't in the music? Because we are the keepers of the culture. And trust me, too many of us get out here and start telling the truth. You might wake some people up. You know, how come we don't have drums for guns? Bring your gun, I give you a drum, and you can go over there and learn how to play. No, they don't want that. They don't want that. So that's what we gotta do. You gotta tell city officials in your neighborhood, your councilman, yo, you need to implement a program where you get a drum company to give you a discount on some drums so you can offer drums for guns. Let's get the guns off the street. Let's bring the love in. When you play the drum, you playing with love. Anybody want to fight? Anybody want to go outside and fight?
I want to dance.
But no, you don't want to fight. You want to have a good time.
Yes,
Everybody
sir.
have fun. Why I want to be nasty and negative now? Because man, this is beautiful what we just did. You know, so that's to me was where it's at. You know, I'm so thankful that all of you folks showed up to hear my story and to share with me so that I could share with you. Because if none of y'all was here, man, it would be just me and Mike. Me and Mike did just a few times where it was just me and Mike. So I want to thank each and every one of you for bringing your spirit, bringing your heart, bringing your love, and bringing your fellowship. This is what we did. We fellowship right here today. All right? It don't have nothing to do with your religion and your beliefs. We fellowship here. We brought love. Everybody brought. Look at all the drums you see. Man. Last time you see this many drums is like maybe a drum factory. You can't even go to the music store and see this many drums. So, you know, I take my hat off to everybody. God bless you all. Everybody get on the stage. Before we leave, we're going to do one more thing. We're going to do a one quick, fast thing. You ready? All right.
all over there.
This is a MJF production.